right, here we go. We got a good one today coming at you.
We do. Coming at you. It's August 8th. Year.
So.
It's 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast. This is episode 788.
Yes, it is. And I'm excited. We got a big race coming up, and I think everybody's starting to think about it a little more.
You think? They're not thinking about the race. They're thinking about the algae bloom. Everybody's panicking already. Panicking yesterday, getting emails. Hey, I'm sure you've gotten this email a lot already, but, do I even do this race? Do the swimmers camps? I'm like, what are we? 11 days away? We're 11 days away. And let's be honest, if they can have the triathlon event in Paris, they can have the swim in Louisville. And I think as far as this morning goes, and from my regular updates through the man on a mission, the man of town right now, Robbie Bruce, said, looking like things are going to be fine. So let's all chill out a little bit and let's just act like Minnesota right now. Minnesota is whispering sweet nothings to me right now. I'm in hoodie and shorts again. It is a beautiful day here. Looking forward to a wonderful podcast. Yeah, it's this is kind of like the last week of a little bit of a lull, right? You kind of got the mid to late August lull when it comes to big, more popular races. Obviously, there's plenty of races going on every weekend: sprints, Olympics, half marathons, 5Ks. The off-branded 70.3s. But this this window of time in August is really kind of the calm before the storm. You got school coming back next week. Summer feels like it's flown by. You got Louisville kind of spaced right in the middle of that. That's next weekend, where we will be all up in town and everywhere. So be on the lookout for anyone and everyone with the C26 shirt on. We will be taking over the city. And I'll be interested to see, there's no rumors about what might be of next year. Would it be a 70.3 again, or they didn't come back? How long was the contract for? Was it a one and done? I mean, it sold out, or would they dare bring back the full? A lot to be decided, but yeah. And then you got, once September hits, it is full gas. You got obviously Wisconsin 70.3. You got Michigan. You got Santa Cruz. You got Maryland, you got Chattanooga, you got Nice, and you got a couple. It's full on. So this is kind of that's the calm before the storm for athletes, but also for coaches. So yeah, it's exciting time. Again, a little bit of downtime. So we hope you enjoy today's podcast. If it's your first time tuning in today, welcome. We appreciate your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. Time is every valuable. Appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also love race previews. For the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as coaches and athletes, but also as not just as coaches, but also as human beings and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level athletes looking for their first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite level amateurs trying to get back to world championships and everything in between from all over the globe. We use the feedback loop we have with them and Training Peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also like to utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. Awesome people, fantastic community, solid resource in a sport that is oftentimes way too confusing and way overcomplicated. It offers a safe, actionable space to get great information from seasoned veterans who have been around the block, made all the mistakes that can help hopefully steer you away from them. And we go in there about, every 3 to 6 weeks, do a bit of a Q&A, take the pulse of the community, and try to answer as many questions as we can on that podcast. We have no sponsors and we have no ads, but we do have an agenda. That's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
I thought for a second there you were trying to do your own version of double speed on that.
I had a little extra oomph in my coffee today, and I thought I would go like full on Micro Machine, like the old school Micro Machine commercials. But slow down. Yeah, I really want to try negative split the podcast. I don't know why. I felt myself going into the gray zone a little bit too early today, so I want to rein it back in. Consider it early, like a stride. The early podcast stride, just opening up the vocal cords a little bit and doing a few strides. When I was trying to settle back in, maybe pick up the tempo towards the end of the podcast today.
That'd be great. A quick note on, since we are going to talk about swimming today, it's And that Louisville, I mean, like algae, yeah, you guys will be fine. You don't even want to know what we swam through back in the day. I just get it out of your head, man. Stay positive, because if you talk yourself into it, that'll be a bad thing. It's just water. It's just shit spread out.
Back in the day, and you'll
sweat it out anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Music City Triathlon back in the day, they had in the Cumberland River. Didn't Jim grow like a third nipple after that race?
That's what he said. Yeah.
I mean, like, listen, there's the rivers and lakes that we swim in. I mean, like, even if you do like open, it's like funny, right? Because people pay like tremendous attention to the race water quality, but then when they go for like open water swims in like random lakes and ponds that have like no tracking, they just think it's automatically fine, and then they just like go in and do their own thing. I'm like, listen, it's you know what? It's it's good for you. Okay?
Water's
like
awake,
my mom always
man.
say, you don't get sick that often because I put you in daycare when you were little.
Yeah,
and you
there
went
you
to
go.
daycare no matter what. When you were sick, you went. When you were healthy, you went. And that's why your immune system's so great. She still says that to this day.
Yeah.
It's kind of like her. She's like, hey, I got your back. Still, all these great decisions I made.
You're
as a
welcome.
parent. Exactly.
That's what my
she
mom
said.
says too. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, you're welcome. I shoved your ass. I had to work. Your dad had to work. We shoved your ass in daycare. We didn't care if you had a runny nose or not. We were sending you. We had things to do. And you know what? You rarely get sick, so you're welcome. So yeah, if you're out there,
start building it up.
Exactly.
Plus, Jim had a third nipple back then, but now he's like a karaoke king in Cozumel or some shit. And he's come through it better than ever.
You gotta have. I mean, and you don't think it benefited him? I mean, hey, the water quality down there isn't sparkling either. So I'm sure that the little adaptations you got from the Cumberland River and Percy Priest Lake probably coming in handy right now. So yeah, I mean, listen, it is what it is. You're gonna hear if you're panicking about it or you're worried about it, just get off Facebook. I mean, honestly, 90% of the world's problems can be solved by getting off Facebook. Just get off. Stop paying attention to the groups. It's all panic. That's all it is. It's all anxiety. It's all panic. It's all, one way or the other. Just get off. Do your own thing. Show up. See what happens and do the best you can. It honestly is that simple.
Yeah. Because there's people out there that I think just do it on purpose a little bit.
100%.
That trolling, like.
They love to do it. They love
looking
to
for
just
anything.
drop it.
That bike course looks amazing, but man, there's a lot of gravel around.
Oh yeah. And then you go out there and you see no gravel, but
I
you
know.
spend the entire time on your brakes looking for gravel, and then you have a hard ride and you're like, worst ride of my life. Yeah, it's just funny how people can put things into our head, or the roads are so rough, man. They're so rough, and you go out there and it's interesting, like the psychology of what you hear. And how it influences your experience, and you can go out and be like, oh, dude, totally, it was so rough. And if
I know.
And you go out there and you're like, those roads are fine, but if you hear it, one way or the other, it's And everybody complains about road services, and that's because most people don't ride on the roads anymore. Everything.
Now you're onto it.
Yeah, I mean, unless we're talking about something, I'm trying to get off this tangent, but everyone complains about road surfaces because no one rides on the road anymore. There are no potholes, especially like the Midwest potholes and the chip seal on Trainer Road or Zwift. There's none of them.
No.
And it's one of the most, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of the Midwest road courses, Ironman should offer dental work in the tent, the recovery tent. From
these mouth guards. It is funny you bring that up though, because that first Wisconsin I didn't even really notice the roads.
I didn't either.
Because no one had been like in my head about it, and now I even talk about it. But it's like, I don't know, man. It's just roads. A lot of times they're not. There is a lot of really nice sections out there with good roads, but if you're hyped up and like you're saying, hyper aware of every little bump, it's going to seem worse, I think.
Yeah, I only thought there was like that one stretch where the special needs were. I remember that being like jaw shattering, where I was having a ride in the middle of the road. But outside of that, I don't remember it being that bad. And leading up to that race, I didn't ride outside at all.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, because Hayden was just born. I was doing all my rides inside on the trainer, cruising and just crushing Sons of Anarchy and Breaking Bad. And didn't get outside once. And I remember thinking, like, besides that one stretch, I didn't think it was that bad. But then obviously now, once someone complains about it, it's everybody thinks it's bad. So anyway, back to the topic.
You know what is bad? What I've done recently is Barlow. I went back out and did that hill again.
What would you do that for?
Just hill riding, man.
Already.
Just spun off the course for a minute when it's like, let me just see if I can remember this thing.
I'll never forget driving up that thing. Weren't we in like a rental minivan?
Yeah, we didn't think it was bad when we were driving.
No, we didn't, but we both confirmed afterwards that it was in fact bad.
It's brutal, dude. I was I just because I never had power. I was just curious, and this time I was like 400 watts. I was going 3.5 miles an hour. That thing, man, it's pretty bad.
It's gnarly. I like it though.
I love it, man. Don't get me wrong.
It's great to have stuff like that in our races. So
I agree, man.
Yeah, I think that was I look back and I think I did that too. Maybe it was a year or two ago, and that was my all-time peak power was like the last 200 feet of that hill. That year that we did it. I'm not sure I ever came back from that, but whatever. Still had a great day. Was happy with it. Speaking of being happy, we're talking about swimming today, which, if you've listened to this podcast before, is one of my favorite topics. And I will say, as long as we've been doing this podcast and the amount of time I've done like video swim analysis, we've done swimming podcasts and worked with swimmers and had swim camps, I'm still amazed at the new things that I see with athletes. So right now we've got the online swim school. We're finished up here at the end of August. It's been amazing. Had a great group. They've worked really hard, done an amazing job. But these last few weeks I've been doing a lot of swim analysis, video swim analysis for athletes that had that as part of their package. And again, I'm always reminded when we do those, like how again, it's a great time to do this, I think, because even watching the Olympics, right? I think you could watch every race and see how different everyone looks. They all look pretty similar below the water, but how different everyone attacks different races. Some athletes in the 50 are breathing every stroke. Some are breathing 0. Some are, in the 100, 200, 400. Again, breathing every 3, breathing every 4, 2, 1, 2, breathing every stroke. And their arms look different. Some have high elbows. Some have windmills, high stroke rate, gallop stroke. It's all very, very different. It's all based on rhythm. But when I was doing these swim analysis, I was reminded of how hard you can be told to do something. And in fact, I know we use this analogy a ton, but you can be told to do one thing when you swim. And in fact, when you see yourself, you are not doing even anywhere close to what you think. And so the two big ones I wanted to kind of harp on today were early vertical forearm. And I think people think they're doing it when they're not. And then also the tucking of the chin, which actually leads to something different, which is called bending at the neck. But before I went into that, I wanted to discuss very quickly breathing. I talked about this on the Zoom yesterday and already had one athlete comment this morning that they've been working on breathing for years. And just a quick little, the Zoom call description we did yesterday solved everything. And we did this at our last few camps. And again, it seems like something very, very, very elementary, but as for most people who get into triathlon that are having issues are adult onset swimmers. So you feel like, right, I'm an adult, I know how to breathe, but in fact, you do not. And this is an area I think that's totally skipped with most swim programs and most coaches is the breathing, because you just assume an athlete knows how to breathe. You assume that when you get hypoxic in a race or hypoxic when you swim, it's because you're going too fast. Well, the reality is that most of the time it's because you just don't know how to breathe correctly. You don't know how to exhale. You don't know how to inhale. And so this is I did this with a local athlete who I started working with a couple weeks ago, and he was only able to do about 200 yards per time he went to the pool. He sent me some video, and he was like, "Hey, man, this is what I can do. Can you help me?" And I look at his stroke, and I'm like, your stroke isn't great. You're not Katie Ledecky, but you're not like actively drowning. So where's the problem here? And he said he'd get so out of breath. And as a swimmer, you think, oh, I'm just not fit enough. I just don't have any swim fitness. And while that might be true, I was looking at the guy's run times. He's a half marathon or marathoner. I'm like, dude, you're obviously in shape. Like, you're not some sedentary dude getting off the couch who is, in fact. I'm like, so something ain't right here. So we met up for a swim, talked through things. Like, he's like, yeah, I don't know that I'm breathing. So I watched him swim for a while. I was like, listen, you're not breathing at all. You don't know how to exhale. So we did what we did the last few times at our swim camps, which was have her by head of the deep end or the deepest part of the pool. You tread water, you take a big breath in, and then you grab your I have them grab your knees like you're in like a cannonball position. And then your job is to sink to the bottom, to really truly learn how to exhale. And the first time I had this guy do it, and this is the same way at all our camps, maybe out of like 30 people, maybe 6 of them go to the bottom. The rest of them don't sink at all. You don't sink, period. Their lungs are still full of air. And you think, oh, that might not be a huge issue. But if your lungs are still full of air, then the next time you go to breathe, you cannot take in any more oxygen. So at some point, you are going to run out of the oxygen that you took in the first time, and you're going to start working at a giant deficit, which is when you get that hypoxic feeling. And so we worked on it 2 or 3 times, and finally he was able to sink to the bottom. And I was like, dude, this is a game changer for you, because now you can actually breathe. And if you can breathe, guess what? You can swim longer. If you can swim longer, you can focus on your technique. And if you can focus on your technique, you can focus on fitness. So he's doing like over 1,000 yards each time he swims, just because he knows how to breathe. I think this is, again, like a point that a lot of athletes struggle with, is that you just assume you don't have the fitness and you're afraid to go hypoxic. But it's not your speed, it's your inability to breathe correctly. And again, like when you look at how to improve someone's swimming, they need to know how to breathe, and they need to know proper head position, right? Because swimming is very similar to cycling, right? It's hydrodynamics versus aerodynamics. You can have, if you're a person, I call it, checking the weather. When a person goes to breathe and they have both eyes out of the water, their whole entire mouth, and they're staring at the sky, right? They're trying to see, if they can make that cloud formation looks like a rabbit. I'm like, what are you doing staring at the sky? Like, you don't get more oxygen with your eyeballs, both eyeballs and nose out of the water in your forehead, than just your mouth. Because what happens is that actually makes your body sink. You can have very poor body positioning and the best technique, right? Best early vertical form on the planet, but you're not going to go anywhere because you have so much more drag. Conversely, if you have outstanding body position and just a halfway decent stroke, you are going to beat that person with the perfect stroke and poor body positioning. Again, it's all drag. It's all drag, just like it would be, with a time trialist who's very slippery and aero with a low CDA, aero helmet on, TT bike, pushing 200 watts versus the guy next to them sitting up on their road bike, terrible aerodynamics, dropping 80 watts more power at higher heart rate, higher effort. Guess what? That slippery guy in the TT position is going to wax that person every time. And so again, I think if you're a person who struggles with swimming, and even if you don't think you struggle at swimming, but you think you struggle on race day with getting hypoxic early, a lot of times, again, remember, it's not about going out too fast. It's about forgetting or just not having a correct understanding of how you're supposed to inhale and exhale when you breathe. And just that little trick alone, working through that, learning how to actually empty your lungs, blowing bubbles, making a noise, whatever it is that you need to do, can really just like be a huge game changer when it comes to allowing yourself to swim longer and swim more comfortable.
Yeah, and I think people, that's why I'm big into deep breathing all the time, just as a habit, a practice. Now, I try to train it because I do think that there is something to be said, though, because before races, people get tense and their breathing becomes really, really shallow and their lungs aren't open and expanded. And that's why I'm such a big proponent of warming up, because it gets the blood flow and the oxygen flow going through the lungs and the shoulders and the lats and all that stuff. And I personally, maybe, I don't know. I think people usually probably do go out a little bit fast, but if you're in that sort of a deficit oxygen state, it feels even worse, so maybe there's a combination of both there. People starting too fast and they're just not ready to experience even a normal swim right away because they're just so pre-race hyped, just I think certain people have better breathing habits. And if you're getting really shallow before a race, and we've talked about this many times, just go find your corner for 5-10 minutes, get away from people. Don't be, just socialize and go out and really get your breath in kind of tact and find a nice rhythm with it. So when you do start, you're going to feel a lot better, because I agree, man. It's like, it's all about the breathing out. You're going to breathe in. It's natural.
Exactly. And the thing is, you have to remember, right, is that, and I think that's, I mean, just kind of like we just joked about the water quality. Like you're coming into a race and people check the weather and the water quality 24/7, but when they go do their regular, like, weekly open water swims, they just go and do it. And when people go into races or go into these, like, or practice open water swims, they just go out and assume it's all going to be okay. And if you don't, and again, just because if you don't have a set breathing pattern, you don't know and have practiced how to breathe correctly when you swim, then eventually you're going to run out of real estate. You're going to run out of real estate when it comes to being able to inhale and hold oxygen that your body is going to use. You're going to start with the bag, right? 2 bags that hold, 50% each, combining 100% of the oxygen you can hold in your lungs. And if you don't exhale, you're going to run out of real estate. So your first few breaths, you're going to have 100, then it's going to have 90, 80, 70, 60, 50, 40. And all of a sudden you're working with 20% real estate, and you're taking these short, shallow breaths, and you wonder why you go hypoxic. And again, like, these are things that can be practiced. I mean, simply, right? You don't need, I mean, the amount of time people spend with these drills that make absolutely no sense when it comes to what you're able to apply when it actually comes into a race scenario it's mind-boggling to me. The amount of time people spend on, I'm going to kick on my side with some fins and my arms laid out to the side, my arm by the bottom. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Oh, well, it's about being long in the water. Yeah. When are you going to swim like that? You're going to be moving both legs at an opposite angle, right? Your kneecaps are going to be facing the bottom, and you're moving your arms, and you have to breathe, and you're not going to have fins. None of that is the same, especially for an adult onset swimmer. And so, like, if you're taking this enormous amount of time to do these drills, I'm grabbing my snorkel, I'm grabbing my fins, and I'm slipping on my my floaty pants, and I got my 6 different sets of paddles, and I got my band, and you're going through all these different things. A lot of those are great, but if you're spending all that time, you don't know how to breathe, or you're going so slow. Again, this is why I'm so anti total immersion, is that it gets people comfortable in an unfair way when it comes to their progression. Anybody can be comfortable in the water swimming when they're moving one stroke cycle that takes 37 minutes.
Yeah, and there's nobody around.
I'm just moving my arms.
That's the thing, man, is like, honestly, we swim a lot, and most people will swim plenty, for this half or full or whatever. But like for me, man, that first 300-400 yards is the crucial period of time, because I've been through the anxiety of it all. And this just goes back to why I'm such a big warm up. I mean, that's just me. I have to do it because I know once if I get past it and I feel good, then I've got what it takes. And because that's how it's like, I didn't feel good for the first 400. Well, do the first 400 out of the water. And not really, but you know what I'm saying? Just because like I was saying yesterday, I guess it was yesterday, sometimes I'll just jump in the water and my shoulder will be real kind of stiff and sore a little bit, but after a 500 or 1,000, it starts feeling good. So let's skip that part by getting warmed up. That's the way I think of it.
And again, I think that's a huge part. So warm up in a way that's going to actually be applicable to how you're going to race or how you're going to train.
Yeah, get blood to your arms, right?
Yeah, exactly. Get loose, and that goes with waking things up. It's just funny, right? People are all about warming up and doing strides and doing pickups and ramps and on the cycling and running, and then a pool. It's like, I don't want to warm up. I just want to get right into it. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's just how different swimming is. So again, focus on your breathing. The next one is so I was doing a video analysis, and this athlete had their neck totally bent. Like they were looking not just straight down the black line. They were looking almost to like check to see if they had done their toenails or not. That's how far bent their neck was. And I was going through the analysis. I said, listen, your stroke's pretty good, right? But just like we talked about before, like about body positioning, a lot of people focus about body positioning and think of it's just from the waist down, right? My legs are sinking. Again, very, very common. But this person had pretty good, not the best, but not a terrible stroke. But if your neck is bent, then you're allowing water to come on top of you. And if water goes on top of you, now you are totally submerged. Again, creating more drag in the water. So no matter how good your stroke is, and that's a common issue. Athletes here tuck my chin when they swim, but what they do is they bend their neck to do it. So you don't have to actually bend your neck to tuck your chin. I just did it. You can just tuck your chin and not bend your neck at all. And when you swim, you don't want your head popped up totally. Again, another cycling analogy. When you swim, I'm of the belief that you want your head to be very similar to your head positioning when you're an arrow. Do you want to have your neck kind of like cranked all the way up to where your eyes are looking straight down the road? Right? No. One, that's increased drag. Two, it's very uncomfortable on your neck. At the same point, you don't want to have your head pointed straight down staring at your bike computer or your crank. Right? Again, not one. First of all, it's just not safe, right? Yes, it's more aero, but it's just not safe. You want to be looking down the road, 5, 6, 7, 8 feet down the road. That's where your eyes need to be. Again, your head's still high. And no, there is no like perfect water position of where your head, the water needs to meet your forehead or where your swim cap is. Right. I think everyone's a little bit different. But again, that keeps the water going beneath you because that's the point. The least amount of you in the water versus the most amount of water you can push underneath you. And so when you hear the term, right, and you get the advice, because I gave this to the athlete and they said, well, I was always told to tuck my chin. And I said, that's true. You want to have your chin tucked, but tucking your chin is very different than bending your neck. And so again, if you've had that advice given to you, then and you don't feel like it's working, you feel like you have bad, head positioning, or you've been told, do this or do that, make sure you're not bending your neck, right? And you're not looking all the way down at the water and you're looking like almost like backwards. You're actually just tucking your chin and you can still see in front of you. Again, very, very important. I always find like the athletes that have the hardest time swimming straight in open water are the ones that look down or almost look backwards and their head is all the way down. Like they lose total navigation in the water because their eyes are not looking up with some. And yes, you can't have a set bearing in the water, but it does help to have your head positioned a little bit higher versus straight down the water, or even worse with your neck totally bent.
Yeah. And that is a hard one, right? Because I think especially in open water, if it gets a little choppy, the neck piece, it's a little trickier. I like, it's basically just standing up at attention, right? I mean, that kind of position, right? Not ducking your chin to your chest all the way, but just sort of being neutral, right? I mean,
it's all about being neutral.
Yeah, I mean, that's a mountain pose is what I practice. It's just staring straight ahead and not back, having your head back or forward. You just kind of get that body taut and keep it there.
Yeah. And I mean, again, there's a huge, and even when you swim, right, you need to be firm, but not rigid, right? Because to me, firm means you still have control over what you're doing, right? Rigid means you've lost all ability to be flexible and to have rhythm because you're way too rigid, which again, you can see that with athletes who can, and again, we've both seen it, we can see them thinking their way through their swim stroke. Mm-hmm. Last but most certainly not least, and I think this is, and I've actually never thought about this before, but I was watching an athlete swim and they were swimming, and again, we hear the term and we use the phrase, and I use a lot, early vertical forearm, right? So a lot of people feel like, well, that's just bending my arm. Right? I need to bend my arm in a position where my fingertips are pointing towards the bottom of the pool, and my forearm, my paddle, my entire forearm is facing the wall behind me, right? That's early vertical forearm. And I was watching this athlete swim, and if you looked at them as in like a still photo, their arm is bent almost to where it needed to be for an early vertical forearm. But what was happening is they simply bent their arm and continued to move their entire arm through the water with it bent. So they didn't have an early vertical forearm because, again, when you guys hear early vertical forearm, you need to think about, and talked about this on the Zoom call yesterday, is people need to think about their arm as two separate levers. You've got the lever that is your elbow to your wrist and the lever that is your shoulder to your elbow. Simply bending at the elbow is not early vertical forearm. That is swimming straight armed with not swimming straight, but that is swimming with the bent arm. Because you're still moving, again, like when you look at most athletes and how they swim, and I do this in the dry race sport a lot at swim camps, is a lot of athletes move their it's funny, right? You hear about early vertical forearm and how your arm should be bent. But in reality, most athletes do it opposite. They have their arm bent out of the water, and then when it goes in the water, it acts like a windmill. It moves like the hand of a clock from the 3 o'clock position all the way back to the 9 o'clock position. Again, if you drew a line from the 9 o'clock over to 3 o'clock, that's the surface of the water. But then above the water, their arm's super bent because we gotta have that high elbow. Got to do some fingertip drag. Got to do some catch-up drill. Got to have the high elbow. And then again, in the water, they simply place their hand at the 3 o'clock position, and then that hand of the clock, the minute hand, the long one, moves straight down to 6, again, pressing water down, and then from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, presses water up, which pushes them back down. There is no early vertical forearm. On the other side, if you see the best swimmers from the 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock position, their arms are a lot of them, not all of them, but a good portion of them are straight. They have a straight arm out of the water. And then when they get to the 3 o'clock position, pushing back to the 9 o'clock position, their arms work as levers. Right. So you think about the hands of a clock, right? And you see and you've got, let's call it, I've never done this before, but I'm going to try it right now, is if you look at your, the hands of a clock, you want the whole entire length of your arm, right? It's the minute hand, it's the long one. And then the lever, right? The most important lever is the hour hand. It's that short one. It's the paddle. It's your fingertip to your elbow. You want that to work independently of the whole entire hand itself. So once you place your fingertip to the surface of the water, you now want that bottom lever, your elbow to your fingertip lever, to now move to where it's pointing straight down to the 6 o'clock position. But the upper lever, your shoulder to your elbow, is still stuck on 3. Right? So you want your one lever to be pointed basically at 330. So you want one lever at 3, which is your upper arm, and then the bottom lever, which is early vertical forearm, at the 6th position. You don't want to continue to move it and just have a bent hand on the clock. And that is a huge difference, again, when you think about pushing water backwards. You can bend your arm again, which a lot of people do. They're, oh, my arm's bent. I got early vertical forearm. No, it's not. One, your forearm isn't vertical. Okay, it's still pressing down. You just bent it. But yes, if you move it to a certain position with your elbow high enough, it's going to look vertical. It's just not early, and it's also not late. It is just moving. You're only pushing water backwards from that 5:30 to 6:30 position. Everything else is pressing water down or pressing water up. So yes, that's a hard thing, I think, for people to wrap their brain around. Again, because swimming is one where you think you're doing all these things at once. Again, which is why I find so many drills are relevant, because none of them feel like you're actually swimming, right? Things like fist drill are a great thing to work on early vertical forearm. Use of paddles is great for early vertical forearm. Like there's a lot of things you can do to work on it, but you need to do it while you're swimming. It has to feel like very, very, very part of your swim stroke, right? It'd be like telling somebody on a bike to get off their bike and do drills that are going to make them spin their legs faster. No, you make them do it on the bike while they're cycling. Same with running, right? You add in strides, you add in skips, you add in high knees, you add in butt kicks, right? You add in all these different things while you're actually running, not separate, totally separate as it's like a different form of it. But that's what people prescribe when they prescribe swimming. That's what there's such a huge disconnect in what I think I'm doing versus what is actually happening in reality. And again, if you can fix just those 3, I know that they're not they're not easy fixes, right? But if you can fix how you breathe, so I get more oxygen, I can fix my head position, right? So I got less drag, and I can fix my early vertical forearm. We're not talking about, a second or two here. We're talking about tens of seconds that actually add up to not just tens of seconds, but tens of seconds that are also with more oxygen, sort of more efficient. Like, these are all very simplistic things you can do if you just take a little bit of time to focus on them. And again, like, that's why it's so, I think, so frustrating as a coach who loves to coach swimming and teach about swimming, is that you just have to take a little bit of time to do it correctly. And it's not about taking a step back. It's about slowing down. Or you can keep speeding up and try to get through it and continue to be frustrated. But there are so many different ways to figure out how to get better, how to get fitter. And again, like, it doesn't make you just a better swimmer. It allows you to be also a better cyclist and better runner. And like, that's why, everything is so connected that again, and swimming starts. It's the very first thing. So if you can get better at it and get more efficient and come out with fresher, like, it's not just going to make your swimming more enjoyable. It's going to make the whole race more enjoyable and better and faster.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying here. There's three things: early vertical forearm, breathing, and tucking the chin. And these are, I mean, frankly, I'm sure most people, because I just speak for myself, but the more I swim, I sort of experience these things, and a lot of times I don't necessarily know what's going on, but I know that I'm just finding something, right? And I think if you kind of keep it simple with these and just keep working on them, because it's about repetition and it's about volume, and the more you swim and the more kind of fit you get for the water, the easier these things seem to be. So it's, swimming can be way too complicated. And like I was saying the other day, I find that, I've heard these types of things over and over. I just need to kind of dial them in, but then that rigid or firm but not rigid kind of philosophy where you're actually swimming, and releasing your body. I mean, like, when I see people practicing early vertical forearm, and it's just like their arm is just completely 90 degrees and they're trying to pull it back, and it's just like not using any real leverage or muscle groups or flexibility or anything like that. It's never going to be quote unquote perfect, but like you said, I think the other day, it's sort of like you have to be your own athlete and find what works best for you. I mean, I would sit there at our camps, and there's some really good swimmers that swim like differently than someone else that's a good swimmer. So it's like, where is that sweet spot in your stroke that works for you? And then how can you make it stronger and be more relaxed as you're doing it? And, and then adding a lot of swimming, it's like, when I'm swimming a shit ton, I really start to feel like I'm a better swimmer, and then I won't swim for 2 months or whatever after a race. And guess what? For some reason, it just doesn't click anymore. It's like trying to learn a foreign language again when you're in your 50s versus, as your 4-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading through Training Peaks this morning, and I was looking over a swim for an athlete who's doing Ironman. And the comment was, when I first looked at this workout, I was like, what the ever loving fuck? But it wasn't that bad. And I said, oh, you made me blush. What a compliment. And it is. It's like but you don't start with those. Right. And I think, like, it's just funny how different, especially triathletes, look at swimming versus they look at the other two sports. And sometimes it is all the same, because you think about cycling and you think about running and you think about preparatory phases, right? Like, if you want to absorb the work you're about to do, you need to do the work that puts you in position to do the work that you can then absorb. Like, we use the term train so you can train like you need to train to get ready for race day. But a lot of people just hop right back on the end of the train. And so you think about, adapting and preparation. Like, if you want to go out and do, threshold VO2 max type workouts for your running because it feels good to go fast and I got to hop on the track, and you don't do any preparatory work for that. You don't do any work like, hill work and repeats and strides to help strengthen those ligaments and tendons in your skeletal structure. You're not going to last. You're going to have no base in which to absorb. right? You're going to have, you think about a sponge, right? Your body is a sponge, and that's how you absorb, you absorb things. You're going to have a you're not going to be able to soak in much and then squeeze out anything. And cycling the same way, right? If you want to be able to do things correctly and you want to maybe smooth out your pedal stroke, do some high cadence work, do some sprints, work on, efficiency and economization. And swimming is the exact same, right? Slow down a little bit, take a little bit more time to do it correctly and to do it right versus to rush through. Because then your return, I mean, because it's and I think swimming is the one where people's, like their definition or their view on return on investment is so skewed. It is like, if you continue to do what you've always done and you're not getting faster, then that's the worst time investment period, or like it's not even close, because there is no investment. There is no return. You're in the red. You're at a loss, right? There is no profit. There is a total loss. Time, waste of time, implementing bad practices. It's all a loss. Versus, and you might spend 3 or 4 hours a week doing that, versus going in and spending an hour, maybe 30, 45 minutes at a time, 3 to 4 days a week, same amount of time in pool, right? And making it shorter and more focused and doable and actually making progress. Maybe less yardage, huge return on investment. And then when it's time down the road to invest in the longer yardage, you are going to get the return. And it's just like periodizing and doing anything else with cycling and running, is you have to do the right things right the first time and get it to where it's in a correct position to be productive down the line. Right? You can't keep touching a hot stove and expect not to be burned. Right? It's like the person who invests in a stock and then it keeps doing it because at some point, and it keeps going down and down, because at some point it's going to go up. And you have to think clearly, and you have to be, again, the biggest thing is just being specific with your swims and not just noodling around and practicing bad habits. And I think that is the, that again, with swimming, because it is low impact, people get away with it because they're not going 3 miles longer on their long run with their body being beat up and they have to walk, and they just cut it short because they can feel the impact. It might not be a physical impact on the body, but it's still an impact on the mechanics and the amount of time you just spent concreting in bad form. And so again, like, to me, it's the easiest, quickest, like low-hanging fruit return on investment is to short up your swim stroke, and instead of worrying about it being wetsuit legal or not, instead of worrying about what the water temp's going to be, or is it going to be rough, or what down in downstream state, it's like, just spend a little time perfecting your craft.
Yeah.
And like, just think if it was that easy with cycling and running, you just had to fix a little bit of your form and you could drop, 25 seconds per minute mile just by adjusting your form. You think people would be on the track? No, they'd be trying to adjust their form. Same thing with cycling. But with swimming, when it's the most technical of the three, it gets the least amount of time spent doing the technical stuff that gets you the return on the investment.
Yeah. And I can see it, it's probably a good idea to, slowing down, but then you got the, lap button and we're, like looking for gains and shit like that. But give it like 2 or 3 weeks of working that form before you really like searching for that half second off 100 or whatever. It's like, it's just, you got to build it. And then I think once you have it down, then you can more freely go a little more aggressively,
Yep.
Because now you're trying to swim faster and then you lose what you're working on. But if you can build it up, like you said, I mean, I bring that up because I do it too. It's you want to see, oh, that stroke felt good. Oh, wait, it's not any faster though. But that's not the point. It takes time to lock it in. And once it's locked though, then you can start seeing stuff.
It's why, like, you know, it's very similar to why you hear, you know, why you you add in rest intervals or, you know, easy jogging or even walking in some like intensity runs, because when you do run hard again, you want them to be able to run with solid, good form. If they can't, then they can still run fast with poor form, but that's how you get injured. And so again, like the slowing down and being able to do things that are in a repeatable fashion it's just crucial in every aspect of the sport and within each discipline. So I mean, again, like if you think there's, you know, you're struggling with the swim, like, you know, those are some, I think some good solid bits of advice to maybe take a step back in. And it's not getting back to basics for a lot of people. It's just addressing basics that they've never thought about.
Yeah.
You know, they just move their arms within water and then expect to be mechanically sound, you know, and that's not how swimming works, right? It's all about leverage. It's about mechanics. It's about body positioning. Yes, it's overwhelming, but if you slow it down, I mean, you can do anything piece by piece, right? Step by step.
Yeah.
And that's all.
And then perfect it in open water.
Yeah.
When waves are hitting and bouncing your body around.
Application, man. It's all about application.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up, man. That was it. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Favorable weather. And even if it's not, guess what? It's summer. It's what we signed up for. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and it's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, I'm available. Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, buddy. Appreciate the tips.
Yeah, man. See you next week.
Okay. See you.